First, I'm going to go back to a question that we had earlier about how long can you store dry beans. And so I went quickly online and I actually shared with you a resource from, I believe it was Utah. There have been some tests where they have certainly stored dry beans for 10 years. And they also found dry beans that had been stored for 30 years, and both were acceptable. So there you go. You can keep those beans for quite a few years on your shelf, but you don't need to keep them for 30 years, but they won't hurt you. So I would like to start again with a quick chat. So you've heard a lot this morning in a very short time. What kind of bean recipes or beans would you like to try? So you can go ahead and go to the chat and give us some feedback. You have a couple recipes, one from Argentina and one from Brazil. I popped in that my former student from Brazil taught us how to make feijoada. And Juan was talking about iron and those issues with iron. One comment I'd have is that you should try to pair plant-based, like beans, foods with a vitamin C source. So it could be salsa, it could be some orange slices. That will help the iron availability. So that's my tip of the day. So I am going to be talking a little bit more about the anti-nutritional factors that you heard a little bit about, how to inactivate the anti-nutritional factors, and just how bad are they? And I had a little fun with the last section of my talk. It's about beans and digestion, and I called it flatulence, anyone? And I had a little fun with AI in making me some illustrations that don't exist anywhere else that I could find. So there we go. So within beans, we have a number of anti-nutritional factors, and I think that name is a bit strong because I'll be sharing how to overcome these anti-nutritional factors. So trypsin inhibitor, phytic acid, and also oxalic acid, tannins, and then we'll talk about oligosaccharides, which aren't exactly anti-nutritional, but some people avoid beans because of the oligosaccharides. So first of all, let's talk a bit about trypsin inhibitors. Just like it sounds, it interferes with the digestive enzyme trypsin. Trypsin helps break down proteins in the small intestine to amino acids so they can be used by our body for tissue repair and all sorts of things. We do see in some monogastric animals like pigs and poultry that there can be slightly or reduced protein utilization. But what do we know about trypsin inhibitors? I hope you've gathered somewhere along the way that beans may help reduce the risk of cancer. So some of these inhibitor type compounds are actually the ones that play a great role in the potential health benefits of eating more beans and pulses in general. Good news about trypsin inhibitor, and I learned about this way, way back when I was first learning how to become a dietitian. Trypsin inhibitor, being a protein itself, is destroyed by heat treatment. Boiling, as we should with dry beans, and certainly in the canning process, they're boiled. Boiling will reduce the content of this inhibitory compound by up to 90%. So very important to cook beans thoroughly. Now let's talk a little bit about phytates and oxalates. These are naturally present in many plant foods. And if some of you aren't old enough or you don't watch really old TV to know that's Popeye on my screen, Popeye ate a whole lot of spinach because it was to help him build all these muscles. Well, many of our plant-based foods are high in phytates and oxalates, and these actually can bind to minerals like iron, zinc, magnesium, and calcium, which are very important for the vital functions of the body. Oxalates, again, can be found in various foods, especially leafy greens, tea, beets, beans, nuts, and again, grabs onto those minerals and prevents it, at least in part, from being fully absorbed. So that's why we have rules, recommendations in nutrition. We want people to eat a wide variety of foods. Well, that's not possible in some of the developing nations of the world. So that's why some of the foods that are combined, see, I went to a Mexican restaurant last night and I was served rice and beans along with my other foods. Love beans. I always order them whenever I have a chance. Um, but that combination of rice and beans or corn and beans is because beans can be limiting in a particular amino acid, and the other food has that in abundance. So that's the idea of combining foods for nutritional purposes. So let's take a quick look. I found this online, this table, so I just copied it in. So phytic acid again can grab some of those minerals. Beans, maize or corn, rice bran, it's particularly high in this compound. Sesame seeds, soybeans, wheat bran, I highlighted because they have more than maybe some of the other foods on the list. Again, the phytic acid content can be a problem if someone only ate the same foods every day or in a developing country that relied on single sources of food. So I think there have been a lot of researchers, nutrition people across the world that have tried to help so that people are not only eating one thing at a time. But that is the reason we see some malnutrition throughout the world. So how can you reduce phytic acid? Well, soaking helps. And I've shared some information with you. And if you go to our bean site, we have the different methods of soaking illustrated in great detail. Sprouting, germination, that also can reduce phytic acid. Fermentation can, as can cooking. So these are all ways to reduce phytic acid. I have a special case I want to share with you. It's about kidney beans. Don't be afraid of kidney beans. They're great. But kidney beans naturally contain phytohemagglutinins. These are lectins and can be a toxin. But again, the good news is they are heat sensitive. There have been reports of people becoming ill if they're not fully cooking kidney beans. So if we look at the comparison, if you were to just soak the beans and eat them, I don't advise that, but or eat them raw or within a ground of flour, for example. Raw kidney beans have 20,000 to 70,000 of these hemagglutinating units. Fully cooked beans, it's down to 200 to 400. So again, properly cook, boil them, and this can be destroyed. Sometimes people want to use slow cookers, for example, and just put the beans right in there in the raw state. That can be a problem. Canned beans, canned kidney beans, and other beans are certainly safe without any more cooking. You can actually eat them right out of the can if you want. They're processed by canning, and the canning process takes the temperature up to 240 to 250 degrees Fahrenheit. So soak them overnight in the case of red kidney beans, or follow one of the other processes. Discard the water and then boil in new water. Do not eat soaked raw kidney beans. They must be boiled. And as I mentioned, don't cook them in a slow cooker because a slow cooker is slow. It doesn't necessarily boil them as much as they need to be. If they've been soaked and cooked, put them in recipes. Make some chili, make some other soups, and so on. They're certainly safe. Now let's talk just briefly about tannins, also known as tannic acid, depending on the chemical form. These are polyphenolic compounds in plants, including legumes. So we're eating all of these things regularly if you're eating vegetables and fruits in some cases. They have that astringent or bitter flavor, especially in some teas. I think about having green tea, for example, has that kind of an astringent flavor. It's good for you, but it does have that flavor sensation because of the natural chemicals. What's good news? Um, Tannins can help moderate blood pressure and also decrease cholesterol. And they might even be anti-carcinogenic. There are some tannins in legumes. And again, here's my message. Soak them, cook them if you're starting with dry, and that can also reduce this anti-nutritional factor. So I just found this and I popped it into my PowerPoint about 5 minutes ago. Although certain foods may contain residual amounts of nutrients after processing and cooking, the health benefits of eating these foods outweighs any potential negative nutritional effects. And that's from the Harvard School of Public Health. So keep eating them, but I want you to be aware of why we say what we do, which is to soak and cook. So here's where I had some fun. I downloaded a free edition of ChatGPT because I couldn't find the kind of illustrations I wanted to use to give this a little bit of a lighthearted approach. So why are beans called the musical fruit? You don't have to answer that. It's because they contain carbohydrates called oligosaccharides. Oligo means many, saccharide means sugar. So they're kind of a complex sugar that is a little bit more difficult for our bodies to break down in our intestines. And that's why gas production can be an issue for some people, depending on how much you eat. The more you practice with eating more beans and other pulses, the less musical you become. So these are called, or the specific names of the oligosaccharides are stachyose, raffinose, and verbascose. So there's your trivia that you can introduce next time you're having some baked beans or beans with your grilled food. They are not broken down as easily as simple sugars because of their more complex chemical structure. And as a result, that they're not broken down quite as easily, your body may produce hydrogen, carbon dioxide, and methane gas in your large intestine. So why are they associated with health benefits? Here's Dr. Bean on the side. They actually have prebiotic functions. They serve as food within your gut for other bacteria. Your gut bacteria can produce what's called short-chain fatty acids, and these can limit the growth of harmful bacteria. So you're doing yourself a favor. Many of you have probably already heard the term microbiome, prebiotics, probiotics, and those sorts of things. Well, beans can play a big role in feeding those good bacteria. And in fact, prebiotics, such as beans, may reduce our risk of colon cancer, which is a leading cause of cancer and incidence as well as death. And these prebiotics may promote the growth of lactobacillus and bifidobacteria. So really good for you. And you just have to train your gut to be used to eating more beans. But what about the gas? As I said, I had some fun generating these images. Study back in 2010, it was a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled crossover study. So that's about the best kind of study you could do in the world of nutrition. And they used 21 healthy males, ages 19 to 40. they found that flatulence and GI stress was not a significant factor in regular, moderate pulse consumption. So again, you want to eat these regularly. And then they're really good for your gut, and they're also good for the rest of your body for all the reasons we've talked about. They did note, they didn't say, oh no, you're never going to have any gas production, but they did not say avoid beans because you are going to acclimate to eating more beans in your diet. So one publication, there's one of my images I generated along with the other ones you just saw. There's a publication called All About Beans, and that's certainly in the resources that I've shared already, the link to the Field to Fork resources. But these are the basic steps. And I certainly encourage you, if you have never tried to start from scratch with beans, give it a try. We are buying 1 pound bags of beans for a very low cost for our workshop next week. So if you're trying to stretch your budget, this is a good way to do it. So start with your beans, inspect them, remove any broken beans, foreign materials, because beans are growing where they're growing in the soil. They could have some little stones, which could, cause you some dental issues. So take out any of the little stones. Start by rinsing them. Rinse them in cold water. Easy, put them in a strainer. And the method that I usually suggest people use is called the hot soak method. They call it the preferred hot soak method in many resources. So you need a big pot. So you need 10 cups of cold water for each pound, couple cups of beans. Bring the water to a boil. Boil for a couple minutes. Cover the pot. You can pull it off the stove at that point, depending on what kind of stove you have. Some of those stay cooking for a while. So pull it off your burner, cover the pot, let it stand for about 4 hours. And after that, you drain and rinse the beans for 60 to 90 minutes, depending on the type of bean and the method you're using. Some of them, as Juan was talking about, take a lot shorter. We have the cooking times on the All About Beans publications, which we got from a good source. So you have 4 or 5 cups of cooked beans from that process. So what do you do about the gas? Don't give up on beans if that's a problem. Increase the amount of beans in your diet slowly. You don't want to go from 0 to 5 cups in one day. So maybe just start with a couple tablespoons, 2 to 4 tablespoons per day, and then increase over time. You could have 1 can of beans, put that in your fridge in another container, and just add some to what you're cooking just to get your gut used to it. If you are not a bean eater at all. And I would guess if you came to the seminar, you probably already like beans. Use the hot soak method that I just talked about. Another big piece I will suggest is that you should drink more water. Anytime you're increasing the amount of fiber in your diet, you need more water because otherwise you could become constipated from not having enough fluid in your gut. Another thing you can do is change the water several times when soaking dry beans and discard the water after the soaking is completed. Many of these gas-causing carbohydrates are in that soaking water, which I always find it interesting when I think about the brine I just told you about or the aquafaba. That's where all of the carbohydrates are located that may cause people issues. So if you're going to use aquafaba, go slowly with that too. Don't surprise your family by substituting all of their eggs and baked goods with aquafaba. They might ask you what you're doing to them. Anyway, so some other methods, and there's a couple reasons to rinse canned beans without sauce. You don't want to rinse away the sauce, of course, but rinse them, and that will take away some of these undigestible or less digestible carbohydrates. And in the process of rinsing canned beans, that will also reduce the sodium content by up to 40%, according to researchers. So it has a couple of good things that are going on because most of us consume way too much sodium or salt. And another thing you could consider is using a gas-reducing enzyme tablet. Um, Beano is a common brand name. There probably are others. And you can buy these over the counter if that's an issue. So again, I want to remind you of some of the resources we have. So let's go to Field to Fork beans, and I've already talked about these, but I'll mention them again. I've put in the chat the Spill in the Beans cookbook, almost a direct link. Pinch and Pennies is how to soak beans. There are also research summaries and new videos coming soon. And finally, thank you. Thank you to our sponsor. And thanks to all of you for joining us. And I'm going to turn it back to Anna.
Thank you so much, Julie. This was amazing information. So when substituting pureed beans for fat in baked goods, what kind of beans are the best?
Well, I would say it depends on the baked good. Usually we've used black beans with brownies because they're brown. For cookies, chocolate chip cookies, for example, we've used white beans. And really, you can use beans interchangeably. They're very similar in flavor and texture and so on. So in baked goods, say you want to put some in your cookies, you want to try that out, I would use white beans. You want to make brownies, you could use white beans if you want, but people will notice them. But just think about what you're making and the application.
And
Okay,
Julia, I learned this from you, but I think you start with half of the fat substitute, right? Okay. Yeah.
Yep, thanks for adding that. Usually you just want to start with a third to a half.
Okay.
And then the cookies that we made on campus, for the fat, she worked a long time making the cookie recipe. I don't even think I have the final cookie recipe, but she used oil and like half oil for the solid fat, and the other half was the pureed white beans.
so I'm just going to mention, like, I just want to thank our sponsor. I think I didn't mention enough, but North Harvest Growers Association actually made this possible. And I'm going to move forward with the next question that says, does it matter if they are fresh or canned beans?
You could use either. Keep in mind with some of the canned beans, they do have added salt because that helps maintain the integrity during that high heat canning process. So definitely, if you want to use canned beans, certainly very easy, rinse them well. You'll reduce most of the sodium. You can also do some of your substitutions with fully cooked, soaked beans that I talked about, and that would, work very well.
Can I say something quickly, Anna, about
Sure,
that
please.
too? I was going to mention this during my talk, but you were trying to kick me out, Anna, so I couldn't do it. But we found that canned beans actually increase your iron bioavailability. So there is more iron bioavailable in the canned beans versus the cooked beans. We're still trying to figure out why. So overall, sometimes canned beans tend to get a bad reputation, but I will still think that, as Julie was saying, the benefits outweigh the negative factors. So I mean, still canned beans are a good option, especially if you rinse them and get rid of the sodium. There is a major canning company that is being now listening to us talking about iron, and they are interested in start of promoting that into their label, saying, hey, you get more iron by eating our canned beans and things like that. So keep an eye on those in the shelves. Yeah.
Saying that, we have a last question and we have only 2 minutes. So Laura asked, you mentioned buying USA grown beans. Is there a reason not to buy beans from Mexico or other countries? I don't know who mentioned this, for which presenter is this.
No, you can buy beans from. As a matter of fact, my suggestion is try all the different beans out there. It's amazing the amount of variety and diversity of beans that you can find worldwide. So be adventurous, be experimental, try different beans. They somehow have different textures, different tastes, and it's really interesting for the palate to kind of start identifying those differences. It's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I can chip in this answer, and I have to say, okay, I'm now a resident from North Dakota, and I have to say I'm proud to be here. And North Dakota is such a big producer of beans that it's just being, I don't know, proud of the local products that we have here and how good they are. So just buying local, it's just good. I'm just saying that. It's just an opinion, I would say, but there is nothing wrong with buying beans from other. They're not toxic, and there is no problems with the storage. There is nothing wrong with buying.
I have to say the U.S. beans are probably the best quality beans you can get in terms of consistency and cleanliness and things like that. But other than that, there is a lot of tasty beans out there. Yeah.
Yeah. So we actually run out of time, and I just want to say thank you to all the presenters. Thank you for your time. And again, thank you to our sponsors, North Harvest Growers Association, for all this support that we got today. And thank you so much to the audience to being here today and the amazing feedback and questions that we had. So thank you so much for being here.